All right, here we go. It is episode 24, season 2 of At Bet Parks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. We're actually coming to you today after a win. It hasn't been the case since November 9th when we had the day after a win when the Flyers beat the St. Louis Blues 5-1. But they get the win last night. Full value for the win wasn't given to them. I thought they earned what they got last night, and they earned a good win over a good team in the New York Islanders. And the winless skid is over. Thank God. Can they win 2 in a row? They beat Tampa earlier this season. Third game of the year. Can they beat them again? We'll see. We'll find that out tomorrow. But Bill Meltzer going to join us in just a moment. And it is time to get Billy on Stick to Hockey Live. So anybody that's got questions, you can reply to the tweet where you're finding this because that'll pop up in my timeline. Also in the comments section on Facebook Live, I guess it is, and also on YouTube, you can post questions that we can see here as well. So let me tell you about Bet Parks. Bet Parks, fantastic casino and sportsbook. It is the best. It is easy to use, easy to navigate, and you can bet on everything from player performances, same game parlays, live in-game betting, teasers, props, parlays, you name it, futures on all the sports, hockey, pro and college hoops, pro and college football. You've got World Cup going on. So there's tons to gamble on. And it's easy to sign up, easy to use, faster to win than ever before. So do yourself a favor. Download the new BetParks app today. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also Conquerville Subaru, because they are fantastic and they have a great deal going on right now. Now, they were the first Subaru Nation Love Promise Dealer of the Year winner back in 2015. And right now, Subaru's got the Share the Love event, which is going through January 3rd. And they'll donate $250 for every new car sold to one of 5 charities, which you get to pick which charity. Either the ASPCA, Make-A-Wish, Meals on Wheels, Nations Parks, and Conquerville's hometown charity, which is Nemours Children's Hospital of Delaware. And so it's a great time to get a brand new car just in time for the holidays. Visit the beautiful showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills right into the holiday season and check out the certified pre-owned inventory and a list of incoming Subaru vehicles. It is a fantastic place. And it's more than just a great dealership. It's a great service department too. Free car wash with every visit. So visit ConquervilleSubaru.com. Check out the showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. And remember that Concordville cares. Let's bring him in right now from PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, HockeyBuzz.com. He's writing it all. He's got a great article coming out on the Flyers from, is it the 80s, Billy?
It is the 80s. It's totally 80s Flyers edition.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's now online on the Flyers website. It was so much fun to put together. And you're from same generation as I am.
Yep.
Those 80s teams were the teams in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
The Broad Street Bullies. I was a little kid and certainly grew up steeped in all that, but it really kind of came of age during those 80s teams. And they're so much a part of my own story that it was a personal thing to write. It was a lot of fun too.
I bet, because you have periods in hockey like classical music. You have your Baroque period. But the 80s are my romantic period. Like, I remember it. Like, it wasn't, I didn't like the Flyers in the 80s. I fucking loved them in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, it was so many guys, whether it's Talk or Peter Zezel or Hexy and Pelly and all of those guys. I mean, there's just so many figures from the 80s that to me are larger than life.
Oh, for sure. You go back and look at those teams, and they really were. They had stars. They had some stars in the team. The Tim Kerrs, the Brian Props. Only one Hall of Famer, which was Markel. But they were always more than the sum of the parts.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at what they did, just banged up, like banged to hell, and the way they were able to take the Edmonton Oilers at the height, at their very height, and take them 7 games and score first, even in Game 7, out of gas,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I really, as a fan, I couldn't, I look back and I was devastated after Game 7. I mean, I didn't talk to anybody for 2 days, but I look back at it now, I couldn't have been any prouder if they would have won the cup, because and so those are very special teams to me, and it's just so the article is just a mixture of stuff, so some of it kind of a little silly, Some of it, like if you still, yeah, and I tried to encompass the entire decade. So like if you still curse the name Leon Stickle,
Yeah.
you were an '80s Flyers fan. If you still haven't forgiven Chris Chelios, for the elbow on Brian Propp, you're an '80s fan. But most of it is on those mid '80s teams, the Keenan's kids teams that I think were really the height of that era.
Yeah, and you're right. They faced Edmonton at that time when they're at the height of their superpowers. I think the greatest hockey team ever assembled, that Edmonton team with Gretz and Messier and Kevin Lowe and Yari. I mean, just Grant Fuhr and Andy Moog. I mean, just so darn good. There's so many players to list. Esa Tikkanen, remember he came in and just phenomenal. So,
Yeah, right. And Paul Coffey and my buddy Lee
yeah,
Heddleson and I, we were at Baldy Middle School, and he was an Oilers fan, and we would go into Howe versus Coffey every single day, and of course Howie's
right.
my all-time favorite player. So I had to include that as one of the things in there. If you used to debate, remember Hockey Digest used to have the "Who's
Mhm.
Better" article.
Yeah,
And I mean, I love that thing every month. And sometimes I totally agreed. Sometimes I vehemently disagreed. But every time I get the issue, that would be the first thing I would turn to. And
yeah.
that was the thing that we would always debate with, which player was better. Now, he was the Oilers fan. And you had to give him Gretzky, right? But
Sure.
yeah. So I mean, and stuff like that. If you still miss Prism, you're an '80s fan. Those kind of
Yeah.
things. It's fun.
Yeah, no doubt. What a great decade that was for Flyers hockey. And so, I mean, starts out with the cup against the Islanders and then go back in 85 and 87. It was fantastic. Um, well, the current team is a ways away from, being a cup contender. They finally get a win last night, though. They end the 0-7-3 10-game winless skid against the team that handed them double digits in the New York Islanders. By the way, I like the home and home. The only thing that makes the home and home a little more, even more toxic, perhaps, would be home and home on back-to-back days. But full value for the win last night. I thought that, Bill, that wasn't a win to end a skid that was handed to them or the other team coughed one up. I thought that they earned everything they got in the game and they got a win.
For sure. And I think the little 2-day break between the games helped
Yeah.
them quite a bit. And a lot of times you see that. You and I have said on Flyers Daily that when you're going good, you want to keep playing. But when you hit the skids, it's really hard because there's not practice time. You can watch video, but you really need to go on the ice to work things out. Having a day to mentally reset, a total day off, and then a real practice day, you could see in the ice like they were very sharp, very structured, and that
Yeah.
that was that was really the key. They took away the middle of the ice, and they outworked the Islanders for pucks most of the night. Um, and it's funny because they did that in portions of the game on Saturday too. But this
Mhm.
time they were able to carry it through. There was no letdown period, and great closeout. Something that's really been lacking this year. To me, the only other closeout that would be even close among the games they won was the game in Nashville. They had a really good third period closeout in that one. Otherwise, games they won have all been hair raising. You just hang on for dear life. Hart was outstanding in the game. Really just you go up and down the lineup, and I thought that everybody was on the same page last night, which often hasn't been the case. There's the talent piece of it, but there's playing there's playing as a team, right? And I think that heading into the season, we talked about what is the roadmap towards being competitive in games night in and night out. I think that last night's game was an example of that, where you're maybe not the more talented team on the ice, but they were the harder working and certainly better structured team. And that's what the Flyers have to be, because if it's talent versus talent, they're going to come out short most nights. So it was really, really nice to see. It's one night, means no more than one night, but we can stop talking about a losing streak. And there's three more games in this homestand, and it's funny because
4.
for all that's gone wrong this year, they've beaten Tampa and they've beaten Jersey, among their 8 wins. So you never know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the rest of this home they actually have four more is tough. You got Thursday against Tampa, Saturday against Jersey, Monday against Colorado. Then you wrap it up the Wednesday against Washington. So you got tough opponents coming in. Great way to start it for sure. And I do think that's obviously while they're bereft of talent, that's their blueprint in the way that they have to win. And there's very little margin for error when you have to play that way or you have to play pretty much exactly that way to win games. But here's the thing, there's everybody's working hard. I think for the most part, 97%, whatever you want to say it is so far this season, I think they've worked. I didn't like the Penguin game. There's points in other games that I didn't love, but overall, they've been a very hardworking team. And the thing is it's not only a group of guys on the team that are working. To me, it seems like I can't really point to a guy that's not working hard or not kind of holding up his end of that bargain.
Yeah, from a work ethic standpoint, from playing away from the puck and those kind of things, and a resiliency standpoint, if they're not showing it, they're not playing. I mean, I think in terms of to the extent that you can hold players to that standard of competing, because that's the least you can ask. That should be every single game. That should be without exception. And everybody's gonna have some nights where their legs just aren't carrying them, and whatever. And there's just gonna be certain games during the course of the season where you're just a little bit flat. Even the Penguins game that you mentioned, every game has those little turning point or potential turning point moments. Mm-hmm. And when you're the underdog team, you have to deliver in those moments. You go back to the Penguins game. The difference really in last night's game where things could go off, and it could have gone off the rails. Yeah, the two fights that are right off the hop. Right now the building is going nuts. You take a really bad penalty, and just a stupid penalty, and now then you find yourself down by 2 men for about, I think, a minute and 23 seconds, a minute 32 seconds, whatever it was. And now you give up a 5-on-3 goal.
Yeah.
And now, all the things could totally go off the rails. You give up another one. Instead, you get a shorthanded goal. You draw even. You cancel you basically cancel out the 5-on-3 goal. And that actually sucked the life out of the Islanders. The Islanders really got dominated the rest of that period. And that was the turning point. So those little moments when they do happen, and you're the underdog, you can build off of it. And on the flip side, go back to the Pittsburgh game. First shift of that game, 30 seconds in, they turned the puck over right there. The Penguins did turn the puck right over onto the stick of Kevin Hayes, and he feeds, I think it was Noah Cates for a one-timer from the slot, and Jarry makes a save.
Yeah.
If you would have jumped on them right there, 30 seconds in, you got a goal, all of a sudden you're off and you're running, right?
Yeah.
Second period, a minute and a half in, Bellows and Frost have a 2-on-1, and it's you're trailing 2-1. If Frost scores there instead of tucking it just wide of the post, now all of a sudden it's 2-1, 90 seconds into the second period, and you feel, hey, we're in this.
Yeah.
And
the game.
Yeah, and it's just those little moments. But if you're the more talented team, you're gonna have more of those opportunities in the game to score when they arise. If you're the underdog, you only get a few of them. You'd better capitalize on those, or it can turn on you and go sideways. So last night they stepped up as they needed to, and they defended really well, and then all the rest of that. So that was the blueprint.
Bill, it's interesting because in the game last night after the win, John Tortorella mentioned Kevin Hayes and said, a lot of people think that Kevin Hayes is in the doghouse. He's not in the doghouse. I need him to change some habits, I believe was the way he termed it. I'm not sure exactly how he termed it, but he needs to play the right way. You're looking at Hayes right now, and I mean, he's more than a point per game player. In 23 games, Hayes has got 8 goals and 16 assists, 24 points. What's that, like an 85 point something point pace for the season? I don't know if he's going to end up being a point per game player, but for a team that lacks scoring, I mean, he has been, it's not only, that he's piled up like 4 points in 1 or 2 games and been kind of invisible. He's pretty much been there almost every game delivering points for the team. But the move to wing and now the off wing, to me, I look at that and I go, You know what? I think that maybe is where he belongs because some of his habits in his game are hard for other players to read around him, where he's going to be and where he's going to go. On the wing, that mitigates a lot of that to one side of the ice. And now you can play him with Farabee because they're
Yeah.
both wingers. And Sedlak was in the middle, who I thought had a tremendous game last night.
Yeah, Sedlak was outstanding. Both sides.
I made him the number one star, Bill. I picked it 3 stars last night. I got a lot of pats on the back for that selection of Sedlak as the number one star.
No, I mean he that was a great pick, Jason, because he made an impact shift after shift.
I agree.
On whichever zone it was in the neutral zone too. He was breaking up a bunch of plays. I thought Farabee had quietly a really strong game, a really encouraging game. In terms of Hayes on the off wing or just Hayes in general this season, I mean from the offensive perspective of the game. You really there's nothing you can complain about, and now he's scoring goals too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before he was just racking up assists, and there was a lot of assists on goals that Konecny was scoring.
Yeah,
you know, and listen, he's got to get the guy the puck anyway. So you know, I think sometimes, I think you and I have had discussions about assists before, and some people go, oh well, secondary assists, but sometimes the secondary assist is the important assist on it. Mm-hmm. It really depends on the play. You know, sometimes the primary assist is a guy who just barely got a touch, or it's his rebound that the guy dashes in. I think that in terms of distributing the puck, he's been outstanding. Now he's scoring some goals too, and it hasn't even been line mate dependent. You know, regardless of who he's played with, he's produced points. So from an offensive standpoint, no complaints whatsoever. You know, from a team that's so starved for points, for creating plays and finishing plays, I think Hayes has been tremendous. And in terms of the playing the right way part, and which involves things like back checking, not overstaying your shifts, right? Paying attention to your defensive assignments in your own zone, having your stick in the right position. I think that Tortorella's been right. I don't think Hayes has done that with any consistency. And in terms of those details from game to game, even that's varied. It's, you know, I think he's had back-to-back really strong games. Actually, you know, against the Islanders, he's really stepped up. In the Penguins game, I thought he was one of the worst players on the ice.
Yeah.
So you know, I think that you know when Tortorella is trying to set a standard, he loves that word, and needs guys to model that. He needs Hayes to be one of those guys. And I think he was getting to a frustration point where he wasn't getting it with any consistency. Yeah. So the wing probably is a good place for him. I think there's other guys, honestly, who'd be better off on a wing or looked at on a wing. Number 48 being one of them.
Yeah, Morgan.
Yeah, I understand they need centers, but
apparently not that bad if you're moving Hayes to the wing.
No, I guess. You know, and I thought the same thing too. I mean, one thing is, and I commented on this to somebody last night. Frost has actually been pretty damn good off the puck lately. And last night he made 2 or 3 outstanding defensive plays. But you know, when you're playing center, you're the last to leave the defensive zone, and they want Frost moving, using his legs, moving his feet more. It's easier to do that playing wing than when you're the last one out of the zone.
Yeah.
So it might be of something to try down the line. I mean, I still think he can click at center. I hope he continues to stay with Tippett. It's been hard finding. There's been, I think, one game where both guys had a good game on the same night.
Yeah.
Because it's been one guy or the other guy, once or twice neither guy. But you know, if you have 2 guys, you have them both going on the same night, I think you're on to something. But anyway, you know, you're trying to find lines that contribute. Having Scott Lawton back is huge.
Yeah.
It sounds like Atkinson will be back very soon, and you know, that opens a whole lot up for the team. And you know, then before you know it, all of a sudden you're looking a lot healthier as a team. I mean, Couturier's out for a long haul. Hopefully, have Allison back soon, and then it looks more like an NHL lineup.
Yeah. Then you can put a couple of lines out there that you go, okay, this is, you know, can measure it with NHL skill and talent and some pedigree. You know, the interesting thing with Morgan is, I agree with you. I think he's a player that's so much better served to lead a rush, not trail a rush, because he can create that initial zone entry with his creativity and get into the zone. And some players are designed to get into the zone and lead the rush and curl and set up plays with their vision. Other players are more designed to be the guy that is getting into the zone and setting up for a one-time opportunity or finding the space in the middle of the ice. And I think I totally agree with that. I never thought about it, but to me, he's a player I want leading the rush, not trailing the rush. And we'll see if they move.
I agree. Otherwise, I think he tends to get a little lost on the ice.
Yeah, it gets lost in the middle and down low sometimes in the offensive zone, where he's playing too much below the bottom of the circles and not getting to a place where he can have a little bit of space and create.
No, I agree, and I think it's worth a look. So.
Yeah. Hayes, by the way, has 6 games this season in 23 games, where he doesn't have a point, but he does have 7 multi-point games this season. So I just kind of looked at that, and there's just a lot of consistency there. I mean, he had one stretch where he had 3 games in a row. It was the Carolina Rangers Toronto game. They actually shut out in the Ranger game anyway. They lost 1-0 in overtime. But he didn't have points in any of those games. That's his. Does he even have? No, he doesn't even have another stretch where he's gone more than a game without a point.
No.
So I mean, he starts out the year 2-1-1-2-1 or 2-2-0-2-0-0-0. That's that 3-game stretch, and then let's stop this unresponsive shit. And then 1-1-0-1-1-1-2. So he's been very consistent. You don't want your guy just getting them in bunches and then disappearing. Sometimes that happens with star players, and especially scorers or shooters, which brings me to Tippett, Bill, because he's been a little quiet lately. It really looked like he was catching fire, but of late he looks like he's maybe now lost a little bit of confidence and is just not finding the back of the net. And for a player like him, it's going to come, and when it comes in bunches. But there are going to be periods like this. You just want to mitigate how many of these periods in a season he has.
No, for sure. And, Tippett, everybody talks about Tippett's shot, and I understand why. He's a very, very good shooter. He has to use his legs well, too. And he's capable. We've seen it. He has speed. He can handle the puck. He can distribute the puck. He hasn't had enough touches lately.
Yeah.
There've been – now, it ended up not factoring into the game last night. But there was a play where he almost scored off the draw, actually.
Again.
And again. No, he wasn't taking the face off this time. It was just a clean win to him in the circle. And I mean, just bang on the net and almost scored. That would have been huge. It would have been huge for the team and for him.
Yeah.
Just keep at it. Just keep at it. But yeah, I think that with Tippett, some of the shift in and shift out can get back on track here. As I said, he's been with Frost a lot lately, and I hope that stays together. Mm-hmm. But having both of them play well on the same night, other than when they first put the line together for the first game and a half, and they were both rolling. I think it's been one or the other or neither since, but haven't been able to get them both going. And another guy I want to mention, and I don't know what's going to look like as guys get back and if Atkinson's back. I thought Bellows put together 2 really good games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he's kind of leveled off again the last few. So I wonder if he's the next guy who sits as they get somebody back.
Yeah, because I think Atkinson's coming back in tomorrow, Bill. I mean, you saw the video of him in practice.
Yeah.
I mean, going after Risto, knocking the bucket off. I mean, that does not look like a guy that's not ready to me. And you get Lawton back last night. And I want to talk about Cam Atkinson in a second, but I want to talk about Scott Lawton. Because Torts said after the game, when you talk about a baseball player and your manager or anybody is describing you and they say you're a gamer, it's the ultimate compliment.
Oh yeah.
That means everything. That is, you're a guy that goes out there and plays with honest integrity. And what Torts said about Lawton last night in post game was he's just a pro's pro and a guy that I think that, he didn't use the word lead, but I think he said something like inspires young players and young players can look at him. To me, it was the ultimate compliment of a hockey player. And I think it's really clear how Torts feels about him because he's the only guy that he's put a letter on his jersey this year. And
that says a lot. Yeah.
It really does. He said he's the only guy that's going to have one all season. So you know what he means. But I think the presence of Lawton last night was very calming to a lot of guys. And I don't think it's happenstance that he came back in and they were able to close the game out properly.
No, for sure. The level of competitiveness he brings. And one thing that I think a lot of the young guys, a couple of veterans, have problems with is putting a mistake behind them.
Yeah.
And the thing with Lawton, part of being a pro is he just rolls with the punches. He competes at a really high level. And one thing also that I think, and you have to be around the team day to day, I think they fully appreciate this, is that if you were to look at all the guys on the ice and you didn't know the team, and you'd say, okay, who were the guys who were competing to stay in a lineup, make a team, whatever? Oh, well, the number 21 guy for sure. He's working his ass off out there.
Yep.
And Lawton, of course, is the guy who has his role is solid. I mean, he's going to be out there every game. Makes a mistake, he's going to be out there the next shift. But that's how he's wired. He's wired to work like a guy who is trying to make a team or get in or stay in a lineup. And maybe some of it's his own background experience as a guy who went back to the minor leagues for a full year and came back to the NHL in a little different role. But the example he sets every single day, his work ethic is off the charts. His competitive level is off the charts. And something else too that another reason why he has and deserves the letter on his uniform, and if they had named a captain, would have been my choice to have the C, is because he can, if he says something, it means something. And when you need a guy and there's somebody in there who's struggling or to be in the lineup, and or whatever, like Lawton's the first guy to go to him, and so he's a guy that both the veterans and the young players like and respect. When they talk about trying to establish some leadership group in the room, sometimes you have cliques or whatever. That's not Lawton at all. He's inclusive of everybody in that room. So just up and down, all the things you look for in a team leader, that's Scott Lawton, and that's also why when they re-signed him a couple years ago rather than trading him, my whole point on that, and I think you and I did a whole episode on that on Flyers Daily, was okay. You trade him, you get an asset. Now how do you replace him? Because they're not easy to find. It's easy to find the points, replace points. He doesn't, he's not a big point getter. He's kind of, he'll go through stretches where he's rolling a bit offensively and he'll go through some droughts. But just in terms of the total package of what he brings, those guys are not easy to find.
Yeah. The cost for replacement for a player like that could end up being far exceeding what you ended up paying the known commodity. One of the things too, Bill, not completely known at the moment, but I think based on what Torts has said, we're going to get to know a lot better, is Igor Zamula. To me, based on what Torts said, I guess it was 2 days ago now, Monday, in that incredibly revealing press conference, by the way, on Monday, I thought it was interesting as hell. Yeah. It sounds to me like they're ready to develop a guy at the NHL level on the blue line. And I've really appreciated Torts' transparency with everything he had to say on Monday. But it sounds to me like a veteran is probably coming out so Zamula can cut his teeth and make, everybody says, oh, bring the players up, let them, develop at the NHL level. If they mess up, they mess up. But sometimes a player's not ready to mess up at the NHL level yet. Yeah. Is Zamula there ready to make his NHL level mistakes to get them out of the way?
Yeah, and I mean, remember, he was going through a pretty tough stretch.
Yeah,
he was playing basically every game for a while early this season. Hit a pretty rough patch with turnovers and lowered confidence, and he was sitting for an extended period of time. And I think they made the decision that I mean, he's a guy with this stage of the game. I don't know how much more he's going to benefit from the American League. It is interesting that he was the guy that they recalled and they said we're going to roll with him. I think they still want to see Cam York. hit a level of consistency in his all around game before he comes back up. But there hasn't even really been a lot of talk about imminently calling him up, and it's not like he's not producing points. I think there's, I think it's some of the things that Brad Shaw was talking about, that Torts was talking about during the preseason. They want to see it demonstrated over a long period of time. And they're not going to pull Sealer imminently out of the lineup because in that third pairing role, he's actually done really well.
Yeah.
So I think the odd man out is Justin Braun right now. He sat last night, and I think he's going to continue to sit. He's a veteran. He knows the deal. He's not going to bitch and complain if he sits out a few straight games. So that there's some piece of that too.
Because once you get D'Angelo back, then you have to bump somebody out.
Yeah, you do, and that's so that's we'll see how that rolls. But I think that guy would be Braun.
Me too.
And I also want to give a mention that I thought Rasmus Ristolainen played his best game of the season last night.
Yep, I thought he was. I think sometimes he's over assertive.
Yeah,
but I thought he rose to the occasion to play alongside Provy last night. And I didn't love the penalty. I thought it was. I mean, who was it? Brock Nelson that went down. I mean, I thought he folded up real easy on that. I thought that was a little weak call, but overall, I look at it and I go, this guy, I thought he stepped up and played within himself and didn't overplay. Because I think that's when he gets in trouble, when he overplays situations. I think just the fact that you're not reading about Rasmus Ristolainen or he's not trending on Twitter tells you he played well.
Yeah, exactly. Because or somebody's posting his Corsi or expected goals for the night. So yeah.
He was definitely good in the game. But I think the other thing about the game last night that I loved, and you know why I loved it, was the goaltender. I thought was really good in the game last night. And Carter, as I was talking to Scott Lawton, taping my interview for Flyers Daily right after the game in the locker room that we work out of, Carter was doing the radio interview with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates, and Carter said, bar none, last night, he said this game, but this was last night, he said, this was our best game of the year, our most complete game of the year. And maybe that's, whether it is or it isn't, it's close. But when you have the side-by-side comparison of 10 losses leading into last night, that's why I think he felt that way. And the thing is against that Islander team, which is so big and loves to get inside, Bill, they just didn't let him inside. And the goaltender, did his job, made every save he was supposed to, a few he wasn't supposed to. Mm-hmm. And he looked like the Carter from the 6-2 start or 6-0-2 start in the beginning of the year with a really gaudy save percentage.
Sure. And, we say this all the time, that team play and goaltending are just, they're so intertwined.
Yeah.
And if one is good enough, it'll help lift the other. And if one is bad enough, it'll drag the other down with it. I don't think Carter was even ever that off. I think the team play in front of him was so breakdown prone that it dragged him down with it. And that's what happened. I thought what happened last year too after the All-Star break, because you remember the All-Star break, he had I think a .916 save percentage or so, kind of what he went in to last night's game with, and the team just gave up so many quality chances, looks that were even things like. I don't think there's any perfect statistical measure. I know the current trendy one is saves above expected. That's to me so much of what goes into goaltending is when you make the save versus when you get beat, right? And
situational.
It's very situational. Yeah, and also, if you've given up a couple backdoor goals where you have no chance, now you have that in the back of your mind, and you're a little more likely to cheat off the post, and that's when something sneaks in on the short side. And no statistic will show that, but it's all about the flow of the game and knowing where your team's vulnerabilities are. If you know your team's going to play structure in front of you, and you're going to see the puck, and you can get into a good square position, you're going to hit with the puck, right? And Carter just was out. I mean, he had to make a couple reaction saves that were fantastic right at the doorstep.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of it last night was just positional saves that he made look easy.
Yep.
But that also goes.
That's his game.
Yeah, for sure. When he's on, that's
Yep.
that's his whole game. But
Yeah.
also the team playing with good structure in front of him may help make all that possible too. And it's hard. It's hard to it's hard to separate the two things. So I thought that if you play that way in front of him, he's much more likely to deliver that kind of a game. And if it all gets messy and unstructured and chaotic, any goal is going to be dragged down with it. So even as the save percentage was coming down, a lot of it to me was
Environment.
like how's any goalie going to play behind this?
Yeah.
So
you add any level of predictive with the way that Carter approaches the game. Is so much of it is, beat the pass on my feet, be in my spots and square with the proper depth. And if he has structure around him, that gives him predictability. And when a goalie that plays, his hallmark is structure and his movements and the technical aspects, when he gets a little bit of predictability, look out, because they almost are unbeatable because they're always in the right spot and they have the full Monty of save selection at their disposal. It's what made Carey Price, when he had some level of structure around him, he was so far in the shooters' heads because they'd get the puck on an east-west pass and he'd be there having a margarita, sitting there with the umbrella in the drink, waiting for you to take the shot. And the guy looks up and he goes, I just had a cross-ice pass. I'm supposed to have a goalie sprawling to get there. And this guy's there already pulled up and parked. And it would drive shooters crazy. And then they're trying to pick corners and missing the net. That's how goaltenders like that can get into a shooter's head, just because of their efficiency and being able to be in the right spot. But this is the last thing, but I'm trying to figure this out. They're one game beyond a 10-game winless skid, which, when you go 10 games without a win, it's a miserable existence around the team. I don't think there was any quit. I don't think there was any finger pointing based on things I've heard and all of that. And I think they've worked hard. I think they've been honest in the way that they've played games, even though they lost 10 in a row. And then they get the win last night. But I'm trying to figure out, we all know what seasons are like when, a team is rebuilding or whatever you want to call it, retooling. And there's always a moment in that rebuild or retool where you start to get this flutter in your belly. It's like, when you first meet a girl and you start to go, okay, I'm starting to see the seeds of something really good.
Yeah.
And you start to watch the team, you go, yeah, they're not winning a lot, but I think we're going to head into this offseason and feel like we're going to have a good summer of love, whatever, right? To keep the metaphor going. Are we going to get that feeling this year? Are we going to start to look at this and go, okay, these are the guys that we know Torts is ready to move with? At some point in February or March, are we going to start to go, okay, they're starting to build something here? Even though they need a lot, we know what they don't need and what fat needs to be trimmed. We also know some guys that are going to be here, but are we going to have that flutter at some point in the season, which to me is the time that you hit the chess clock and you go, okay, now we're officially moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two pieces of that. There's the NHL level pieces, and don't look now, but the Phantoms are 6-1-1 in their last 8 games.
Yeah, they're playing well,
and it's not the it's not the Cal O'Reillys that are leading the team. It's the it's the Forsters and it's the Addards and York and even a guy would be a role player like a Leaksell, right? Those are the guys who are leading the team right now. So it's those are guys you're hopeful of developing and coming up to the NHL level, contributing. So there's that piece of it too. That getting the developmental piece right, which is something that I don't think the organization has done a very good job of. In really going back 5-6 years. And we and not to go down that rabbit hole, but just the point of that I think that when you develop players, to me, you put them in position to succeed, you help them smooth out some of the rough edges, but you put them in the role that emphasizes what they do best. I posted I rather retweeted something, and Joe Watson was talking about a quote from Fred Shero, and it applies to this day as much as it did back when Shiro said in the 70s. And he said, as a coach, it's not my job to reward or punish players. What my job is to recognize what they do best, put them in position to do best, what they can do to help our team. And from there, if I don't do that, that's on me. If I do that and they don't deliver, then it's on them. So I think that really cuts to the heart of what the challenge is. And hopefully that's what they do a little bit more of going forward. You don't get a guy who is an offensive contributor that you see that way, and you worry so much about the off puck game. That can come over time, right? You don't get a guy who you see as a power forward, and rather than living with the growing pains, you try to turn him into a penalty killer. Well, one quarter of the way into his rookie season. They've done this. They've done this to some guys, and I don't think that it's put those guys in position to succeed. I think they're starting to get it right now, and that gives me some hope.
Yeah, that is a big thing. The Phantoms end of this, and that it's not the Cal O'Reillys, the guys that are there to help young guys. It's actually the young guys developing.
Yeah,
I mean, it might be time for a little check-in with Ian LaPerriere soon. I have to check in with Lappy, see what's going on down there, see what he's doing, making it work for some of these young players. And sometimes for young players, it's snap. When it clicks, it really clicks. And sometimes, literally, that can be from one game to the next, and then off and running a player goes. It's like one game can change the trajectory of a player, or start the trajectory properly. So. Awesome stuff, Bill. The stuff for the 80s night is on NHL or PhiladelphiaFlyers.com.
Yep, that it is. It's live now.
All right, and it's 80s night tomorrow night. So will they be doing the Cooperalls and warm up tomorrow night?
I think so, especially since the 80s were the decade of the Cooperalls, so it would make a lot of sense. Yeah, and of course they schedule these nights as they can, and bringing alumni, and I know like Davey Poulin, for example, he'll be there tomorrow, but he has broadcasting duty, so they had to find nights when these guys were available to come in, and that's why. And because obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning were not a team during the 80s; they didn't exist yet. But you schedule these things as you can. So, but yeah, I'm sure they'll have a lot of little 80s touches. I thought on the 70s night they did some really subtle kind of stuff that I thought really, was really pretty cool. And I've heard some of what's in store for tomorrow. I'm not going to ruin any surprises, but it'll be, but it should be pretty fun.
Well, I got to tell you, there was a really good crowd there for the game last night for the Islanders. And it wasn't like a bunch of New York people.
Yeah,
it was a good crowd in the building last night. I enjoyed
that. There've been a couple of games this season. The military night also had had a really good crowd that night too. So. Hopefully, people get back in the building, and beyond seeing the good picture, beyond seeing the big picture, just so they can go and have a good time. Because the part of the whole thing about following a team is that experience of going to games, and if it's it should never feel like a chore to go to a game, to go to a hockey game. So
you're going to get an honest effort.
Yeah,
if you're plunking your money down. And look, you're not getting any guarantee of a great game or a win. But what you should get is that, hey, I'm going to get an honest effort from this team. And I think you've gotten that so far. And that needs to continue. I imagine that Torts is going to keep, that accountability on work ethic and those elements right in place. And look, I know a lot of people, but they're hard to play against. And there was 2 scripted fights in the game last night with Delarier going early and McEwen going early. In the first 8 seconds, 2 fights against, 2 heavyweights from the opposition. First and foremost, both teams did that. It wasn't a Flyer fighting a Flyer. So both teams agreed that was important to do in the beginning of that game. Look, I don't love the pre-scripted fight. I think it's lame. I really do. And I like a fight that happens organically within a game. I'm fine with that. But Torts is old school. He values that. Lane
Yeah.
Lambert values that. Barry Trotz values that. And I know how everybody feels about Barry Trotz. He fucking walks on water, this Barry Trotz.
Yeah.
And I love him as a coach. But he
Yeah.
would have valued that last night too.
No,
So, like,
yeah,
the
no doubt.
jokes about, hey, they fighting, they're hard to play again. The guy that you all wanted before Torts, and I did too, Barry Trotz, would have been fine with that last night.
No question. And was it predictable? Yeah, it was predictable. Actually, if you look at yesterday's 5 things, the game preview, the Flyer said, I talked about the carryover, and I said, listen, if there's a carryover in these things, especially nowadays, it's going to happen very early in the first period, and then they're going to play hockey, and it was just it was very predictable. But yeah, I mean, both sides were agreed to it. They got it out of the way. And but I mean, even there too, there's it worked for the bench. I mean, there was the reaction in the crowd, and crowds will always react to a fight.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it had to do with just the guys on the bench getting whatever was left over from the previous game and the third period. All right, let's settle it now. And then they have a hockey game, and that's
now we can move forward.
Yeah, and so I think that still is a piece of the game. At least one fight. It's not always back-to-back fights off of whistles, but you look at the guys who were on the ice.
Man, when they put Ross Johnson into the lineup, there had to
be.
You
knew it. You exactly.
Yep,
you knew it right. You knew before the game what it was going to be like, and that was fine. I mean, that's just part of how it's played, and as you said, with the both coaches are fine with it, and just to wrap things up, bring it kind of full circle here. Lane Lambert way back in the day was a teammate with Saskatoon with Dave Brown and Darryl Stanley.
Oof.
And and Lane loved those guys because he said everybody else on the ice could just skate around and nobody touched them.
Yeah.
So,
he was the most. That was like having Secret Service agents as the president. Nobody was touching you.
Exactly.
Those two guys out there.
So,
the two Bruise brothers.
The two Bruise brothers, yes. Bruise brothers T-shirts and all.
Oh wow, that's fantastic! I didn't realize that Lambert played out there in Saskatoon with those two. That's great. Billy, thanks for doing this, man. Great stuff. Read Bill's stuff at NHL.com, PhiladelphiaFlyers.com. The 80s article is there and posted, which is awesome. And of course, HockeyBuzz.com as well. Thanks for doing this. We'll see you at the barn tomorrow.
Yeah, my pleasure. See you soon.
There he is, Bill Meltzer. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, I wonder when you get that moment of you get the feeling, the flutter in your belly that you go, okay, we're moving in the right direction. Does that happen this year? Some people probably have their doubts. Is that one of those things that you go into this offseason and go, wow, I feel so much better going into this offseason than I did coming into this season? That's an important moment as sports fans, is the moment you get the flutter. And you start to go, okay, I'm starting to see progress in a team moving in the right direction. Is it a guarantee this is some kind of arc that's just going straight up and on an angle? No, but I don't know when that's going to be. Look, the last time I felt it that I really remember, it probably happened in 1920 when they just refused to lose back-to-back games. But when Shane Gostisbehere first came in as a Flyer and was on that 16-game point streak, scoring goals in overtime, I mean, it was like you felt like the team was really moving in the right direction. Now, as it turns out, that team was good and competitive, but made the playoffs every other year and never went on a run. So it's not a guarantee. But, I mean, 2009-10 season, in the second half of that season, you started to feel it. Now, those teams were at different places than this one, so I don't know. I don't know when you feel it. Let me tell you about the BetParx app. It's fantastic. Get in on it. You can bet futures. You can bet same-game parlays, live in-game betting, player performances, props, teasers, parlays, you name it, all there for you on all the sports. How about college and pro hoops? How about college and pro football? You got hockey. You've got it all in the BetParx app. So download it today. Just use the promo code JASON750, JASON 750. That's for new and existing users. That'll get you a risk-free bet up to $750 Terms and conditions do apply. So download the BetParx app today. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also stop by and visit the great people at Conquerville Subaru. They've got the great Share the Love event going on right now. The Subaru Share the Love event going through January 3rd, where they'll donate $250 for every new car sold to one of 5 charities. You get to pick either ASPCA, Make-A-Wish, Meals on Wheels, Nations Parks, or Conquerville's hometown charity, which is the Namor Children's Hospital of Delaware. All great charities. You get to pick. So check out the beautiful showroom. November and soon to be December, tomorrow, will be a great time to visit the beautiful showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. Great service department, free car wash with every visit. Check out a list of their incoming Subaru vehicles and their certified pre-owned inventory. So visit ConquervilleSubaru.com now for all the details. Visit the showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. And, of course, remember that Concordville cares. All right, we're back Friday with another brand new episode. Be plenty to talk about. Flyers and Tampa on Thursday night. Can they win 2 straight? Well, we shall see. But that'll be coming up on Friday for episode 25 of BetParx Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Everybody, have a great couple of days. We'll talk to you on Friday on a brand new episode of BetParx Presents Stick to Hockey Live.